just because it's basically just memorization. And if you can memorize facts, then ecology won't be ecology and the environment won't be too hard. And also a lot of this overlaps with a bit of chemistry, because in chemistry you also talk about the greenhouse effect, things like that. So it's not too bad. Okay, so, and if you do geography, it's exactly like geography, exactly. Okay, so let's just start with a bit of terminology. Also, this is a very, very long topic, like ridiculously long, so I don't know if we're going to cover it all. Just in case we don't, I have attached all of these past paper questions and answers at the back, and also a couple of notes and even a sort of mind map thingy that you can all fill out, and these will all be emailed to you as well. Okay, so let's start with some terminology. A habitat. Also, like in an exam, you might be asked to define all of these, and this is where you might get tricked out. So, an habitat is the place where an organism lives. A place where an organism lives. So this can be either the trees, a field, things like that. A population, so a population is all of the organisms of one species. Remember, one species in a habitat. So all, that's a key word, of the organisms of one species. So remember, it's of one species, in a habitat. Whereas a community is all of the different species in a habitat, all of the different species in a habitat. And finally, in ecosystem, it's basically all of the organisms living in a particular area and all of the non-living and living sort of conditions. So by that, I mean abiotic and abiotic and biotic factors. So we'll come on to them in a second. So let's quickly write down the definition. So all of the organisms living. Does anyone have any questions so far in a particular area? Plus all the non-living conditions, and these are abiotic factors, such as soil type, or climate, basically things that are not living. Okay, so just a few keywords. Remember that a habitat is a place where an organism lives. Population is all of the organisms of one species. Remember, one species in a habitat. A community is all of the different species in a habitat, and an ecosystem is all of the organisms living in a particular area and all of the non-living conditions. So just say yes if you have understood these sort of terminology. Yeah. Okay, great. So biodiversity. So biodiversity is the variety of different species of an organisms on Earth or within an ecosystem. So it's like the variety, you all know what a variety is, I'm assuming, of different species of organisms on Earth or within an ecosystem. Say yes if you understand. Also, if I'm going a bit too fast, you will get these notes. It's just because I am under time conditions. I do need to get all of this done in an hour. Yes, okay. So one sort of we need a high biodiversity. So we need to say that high biodiversity is important. Does anybody know why? Anyone know why a high biodiversity is important? So lots of variety, you wouldn't get a mark for saying that, no. So a high biodiversity is important because it makes sure that ecosystems are stable. So does everybody understand that? It makes sure that ecosystems are stable because we know that species require shelter, food, and different species help sort of maintain the right physical environment for each other. For example, the acidity, acidity pH of soil. So do we all know why high biodiversity is important now? Say yes if you get it. Good. Now, why is biodiversity going lower though? We know that, well, you might not know, but biodiversity is actually decreasing. Does anybody know why biodiversity is decreasing? I think you're on the right lines. Climate change, you have to be more specific than that. Poachers, yeah. Disruption of habitat. Yeah, so basically, so human actions such as deforestation, so that's the cutting down of trees in rainforests, and pollution lead to a lower biodiversity, which is not good. And also, obviously, global warming leads to that as well. So key information here. So biodiversity is the variety of different species of organisms on Earth or within an ecosystem. High biodiversity is important because it makes sure that ecosystems are stable. Stable is a key word. And deforestation and pollution lead to a lower diversity. So all of these, the things that I'm highlighting will be the sort of mark scheme points, things you need to write down on the exam paper to secure your marks. Okay, so is everyone okay with biodiversity? Let me know, say yes in the chat. Just jotting, okay, perfect. So abiotic factors. Abiotic factors can affect a community. So remember, abiotic factors are non-living factors. For example, the weather, climate, remember, don't say weather, it's climate, such as environmental conditions, rain, moisture level, soil pH, light intensity, toxic chemicals, for example, bioaccumulation, or eutrophication. I'm assuming you probably won't know what those are. Just say yes if you do, say no if you don't. Basically, when fertilizers leak into the soil, seep into like lakes, and you have something called algal bloom, where algae sort of fills the lake. Have you guys seen ponds which are like just green and covered in algae and just like disgusting? That's cool. That basically, like, algae builds up at the top of your lake, and that basically means that sunlight won't be able to pass, like sunlight won't be able to go into, I don't know how to explain it. The algae basically prevents the sunlight from reaching the organisms in the plants. Therefore, what happens? We don't get photosynthesis, means no oxygen is produced for other organisms, and that means less respiration occurs, and that means basically you will go into that respiration exam paper sort of thing where if there's no respiration, more anaerobic respiration, more lactic acid, death, etc. So that's why eutrophication is bad. Non-living factors. So environmental conditions, for example, moisture level, soil pH, temperature can affect our community. Toxic chemicals can also affect our community because we don't want pesticides or fertilizers to leak into soil. And basically what happens is pesticides build up in food chains through bioaccumulation. So this is really, really dangerous. So I'm going to give an example of the real world. So I'm assuming quite a few people here eat fish. Now, because we are dumping lots and lots of plastic into the sea, or microplastics, that microplastic appears in fish. And remember, plastic is inert, so it can't be broken down. Now, when you eat your sushi or your salmon or whatever fish you have, that microplastic is transferred into you. And then maybe when a lion eats you, the plastic is transferred into the lion, and this is not good, because that is really, really harmful for your health. So bioaccumulation is really, really bad. I probably shouldn't have done the human example to a lion, but let's just say a fish, then it gets eaten by a shark, and then so on. The shark will have a lot of plastic in them because they eat a lot of fish. But how does this happen? Yes, like Muneeb said, it's because of shampoos. A lot of shampoos have microplastic in it, and when we throw it down the drain, they end up in your rivers, in the sea, and then even though they're like tiny, tiny specks of plastic, they build up into the food chain, which is very, very bad for us. So does everybody understand that? Build up, I'm just going to write it, building up of a, let's say, microplastic. It can also be fertilizers, etc. A building of microplastic along the food chain. So say yes if you understand that so far. Good. So excess fertilizers can leak into ponds, cause eutrophication. Do you want me to explain what eutrophication is? Say yes if yes, no, no. Eutrophication, therefore death of organisms. Yes, please. Okay, so eutrophication, it's basically when fertilizers seep into, fertilizers are things like used by farmers to increase crop yield. So when those chemicals like leak into the soil, leaking of chemicals or toxins into soil, they end up in lakes. All of these nutrients that end up in lakes cause algal bloom. This algal bloom, have you guys seen the ponds with like tons of algae, tons of green stuff on them? That's algal bloom, and then prevents photosynthesis or prevents sunlight into pond. No photosynthesis. That means no oxygen produced for organisms. No respiration, therefore death. So does everybody understand that now? Say yes if yes, no if no. Hoping everybody gets what eutrophication is, but basically it's bad. So biotic factors. Biotic factors are living factors. For example, the number of predators. So if there are more predators, obviously, it decreases the number of prey because they'll die as they get eaten. Another one is competition. Does anybody know what competition is? Say yes, if yes, no, no. Yeah, no, no. Okay, so it's basically when organisms compete with other species. And this is because they fight over the same resources. Fight over same resources. For example, light, food, water, things like that. This also happens within plants because obviously plants want to get as much sunlight as possible, so they like sort of compete against the plants next to them, things like that. Okay, so hopefully that has helped. We will now move on to Quadrats, which is like a really easy exam paper question, just because it's like it's normally a 4 marker. So this is what a quadrat looks like. Obviously, it's a bit neater and it's like a proper square. Now, in terms of a quadrat, a quadrat is used to find out how much of something is present in a certain area, and this is a required practical. Yes, Joseph. So you will need to know how to sort of write this out in your exam, but there's only 4 marks you can really get, which is quadrat, count, repeat, and scale up, it's not too hard if you know the practical. So it's basically a square, and normally we have, I'm just going to put here random as well. Basically, let's say we wanted to measure how many daisies there are in your garden. What you would have to do is maybe throw this quadrat in your garden 5 times. When you've thrown it, you look into the quadrat and see how many daisies are in like each square, and you count, and then basically you repeat, calculate the average, and then you scale it up to your garden, and it will give you an average on how many daisies there actually are in your garden. So normally an exam question would be like, how can you measure so and so in a woodland? All you have to do is put down these marks. Quadrat, use a quadrat. You count the number of whatever they asked, so count the number of daisies in the quadrat. You repeat, you scale up, and I'd probably put random just there because you want to do it randomly. You do not want to have biased results. And then obviously you want to, this is calculate mean, which is the average. Okay, so does everybody understand what a quadrat is and how a quadrat is used to calculate the population size of small organisms? Is either throwing randomly or using a random number generator okay to say in an answer? Yes, either one of those will be accepted depending on your exam board. Again, I'm not too sure depending on your exam board, so I would look at a mark scheme and see if they accept a random number generator. But in terms of the mark schemes that I've seen, most of them are just happy with the word random. As long as you say the keyword random, that it's fine. But remember, bullet point your answers, don't waffle, because they do not want to read an essay. They don't want to read an essay response. So just to quickly recap, a quadrat is used to study population size of small organisms. And this can be flowers, this can be the number of beetles in an area. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to food chains. So this isn't too hard, again. So at the very beginning of the food chain, we have these things called producers. Now, producers are plants. They're always plants or trees or algae or corals. Then we have the primary consumer, which are usually vegetarians. They eat they eat the producers. So sometimes we might have rabbits or like rabbits that eat dandelions. Whereas the secondary consumers are normally carnivores. For example, a fox that would eat the rabbits and the rabbits that eat the dandelions. So let's add our producer. So let's do dandelions. Here we have our rabbit, and here we have our fox. So our fox would eat a rabbit, our rabbit would eat dandelions, but our fox would not eat dandelions. So does everybody get that? Okay, so remember that producers make their own energy from photosynthesis. Okay, Now, the producers are eaten by the primary consumers, so energy is transferred along the food chain. Why does the arrow point that way? Do you mean this arrow here? Do you mean these two arrows? Or do you mean these arrows? Which arrows do you mean? What's biomass? We'll come on to that in a second. So these top arrows are in that way because it starts from a dandelion and then it goes to a rabbit and then it goes to a fox. So it shows the like the increasing, I guess, the from how it increases from a producer right up to a secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, etc. So here are our key points. So remember, energy is transferred along the food chain. So energy from the dandelion goes to the rabbit and then goes to the fox. And each stage, so we know that each stage is a trophic level, okay? So each stage is a trophic level. Now, we need to know that each organism decomposes. Yeah, so we know that decomposes is it breaks down, it's broken down by bacteria. So we decompose, every single organism will decompose, and that also releases energy. Okay, pyramids of numbers. Here we have a pyramid. So this is a pyramid of numbers. Let's say we have 5,000 dandelions here. We have 100 rabbits, and we have 1 fox. So we have lots and lots of dandelions because they're our producer. We have 100 rabbits, which eat the 5,000 dandelions, but we have 1 fox which eats those rabbits. So each bar on this pyramid, bar represents number of organisms. Does everybody get that so far? So again, you probably won't have to label it in your exam. You'll just like, as in you won't have to write the numbers. They might ask, can you draw a pyramid of numbers and of this food chain? And you just have to make sure that dandelions is always going to be the biggest, producers is always biggest. Then it goes up, up, and smaller. Okay, good. So pyramid of biomasses. The key word here, is it always going to be 3 bars? No, absolutely not. It doesn't always have to be 3 bars. It can sometimes be 5 bars, depending on how many organisms are in your food chain. Okay, pyramids of biomass. This is also really, really important. Mass is a key word here. So this time, each bar represents the mass of a sort of living material at that stage. So for example, dandelions are here, rabbits, we have a fox, and then we have maybe a flea. So does everybody get that, get pyramids of biomass? Can't the bottom be smallest? Yes, it can. It can be, when it's inverse. So, so just remember that a fox would probably have a very big biomass, whereas lots of fleas would have a very low, very small biomass. Okay, let's move on to energy transfers. This is not a hard topic. This is not a hard subtopic, but energy transfers. Remember that energy is always transferred along the food chain. So energy transferred from the dandelions to the rabbits, and then energy from the rabbits is transferred to the fox. So can someone tell me what the main source of energy is for nearly all life on Earth? What is the main source of energy? Plants? No, it's not plants, it's light. But where is this light coming from? Yeah, the sun. So the sun equals the main source of energy for all life on Earth. For all life on Earth. I'm going to put nearly here because it isn't always. Okay, is energy lost throughout the food chain? It is lost, and it will always be lost, and I'll come on to that in a second. So remember, plants get energy from photosynthesis, but not all of the energy is available to each, like to the next organism in the food chain, and not all energy equals transferred. Now, again, I think this would come up as a 4 marker depending on your exam board. But the energy is lost, first of all, because some parts of organism are not eaten. The second point is due to excretion. So excretion is the release of metabolic waste. Remember that. So when it's not eaten, it also can come out as feces. So remember, feces cannot be digested. So we then have due to respiration, because the organism loses, so takes in energy to stay alive. We then have, does anybody else know why energy isn't transferred? Egestion. What is egestion? Does anybody know what excretion is? Like, this is also a keyword. Egestion and excretion is something you really need to get a hang of, because egestion is the release of feces and the release of stool. So out of your rectum, sorry, out of your anus, and your excretion is the release of metabolic waste substances. So someone said excretion is the removal of waste substances. You have to be more specific. You have to be more specific, because egestion is also the release of waste substances. But excretion is the metabolic waste. Yeah, excretion, sorry. Excretion is the metabolic, the weight, so the release of the metabolic waste substances, and that's like carbon dioxide or urea. Whereas excretion, ingestion is the release of feces from your anus. Yeah, so don't get confused between excretion and egestion. Is everyone okay on excretion and ingestion? Yeah. Okay, another example of excretion is from your skin, like sweat. Okay, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, air pollution, greenhouse effect, water pollution, deforestation, and then all of these notes at the bottom. Okay, so what should we start on? Let's do a nice, easy one to get it out of the way, greenhouse effect. So hopefully we all know what the greenhouse effect is. I'm assuming everybody, can someone give me one fact about the greenhouse effect before I continue? Global warming. Okay, so keywords. Let's just put our keywords. Global warming. Global warming. Good. Next, causes the Earth to become warmer. Causes Earth to become. Okay, no, I would probably won't write that, to be honest. Keywords, guys, not sentences. Keywords. Keep going. CO2, good. Carbon dioxide. Name me two other gases. Methane, good. Another gas. Nitrogen. You'd have to say nitrous oxide. Okay, so the greenhouse effect. This is not too hard, but first of all, we need to know that the temperature of Earth the temperature of Earth is a balance between the energy it gets from the sun and the energy it radiates back out into space. So let's just draw a nice diagram. So here we have Earth. No, here we have Earth. No, do it right. Oh, just pretend this is Earth. And then here we have the sun. So here we have our energy coming into the Earth from the sun. And then what we have over here is our ozone layer. Let me do this. This is our ozone, where there's a lot of carbon dioxide and methane here. Does everybody understand what I'm getting at right now? And then the energy is trapped. The energy is trapped here. This represents the energy bouncing back and forth, etc. It's a horrible diagram, but let's write it down. So the temp of Earth equals a balance between energy it gets from the sun and energy it radiates back into space. Okay, now gases in the atmosphere, for example, methane and carbon dioxide, they absorb all of the heat that would normally be radiated out into the space, and they re-radiate it in every single directions, and that includes back to Earth. Now that is the greenhouse effect. The methane and carbon dioxide is coming back. That energy is coming back into Earth. Now, this is a good thing because if we didn't have this, it would be really, really cold at nighttime. So because that's how like night, it doesn't get like minus 30 degrees. It's because we have this layer. What are the greenhouse gases? Can someone tell me the greenhouse gases? CO2, good. Water vapor, good. That's an important one. We also have methane, good. And we also have CFCs and nitrous oxide. But these act as greenhouse gases. They act as them, yeah? Okay, so because of all of these gases, and because we are increasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, we cause global warming, leads to global warming, which is the heating of the planet. And what does this lead to? Melting icebergs, therefore rising sea levels, flooding, habitat loss, as someone said, and so on. So does everybody understand this so far? Yeah. Okay. So just remember that humans release a lot of carbon dioxide. First of all, like the car exhaust, industrial processes like factories. We burn lots and lots of fossil fuels still. Even if you're charging an electric car, you are still burning a lot of fossil fuels. Just because where is that electricity made from? It's burned from burning coal. Methane gas, however, is naturally produced. For example, rotting apples, basically anything that's rotting, anything that smells bad. But also cows produce methane, and nitrous oxide is produced from bacteria in the soil and the ocean, and CFCs. Does anybody know what a CFC is? No, so we all have like deodorant, so like aerosol cans. Yeah, so they're all found in aerosol cans, and they're really, really powerful greenhouse gases. So when you spray deodorant cans, they're very, very bad for the environment because they damage and destroy the ozone layer, which protects us from that very bad radiation that we do not want to get. So a lot of countries have actually banned aerosol cans just because of this, and a lot of fridges in like old days used to like leak CFCs. Yeah, so what if we use it in our house? Either way, I think I'm pretty sure it's still like bad. It doesn't matter if you like contain it in your house. It's still bad for the ozone layer and damages it. Okay, next, water pollution and deforestation. Does anyone here do geography? Because this is literally turning into a geography lesson. Who does geography here? Yeah. Okay, so let's just quickly touch upon eutrophication, because that's basically what water pollution and deforestation is. Sorry, water pollution. So eutrophication. So remember, I talked about fertilizers being leaked into lakes and rivers, and fertilizers contain a lot of nitrates and phosphates. So fertilizers contain lots of nitrates / phosphates. Good. Now imagine, so lots of farmers like they just what do? They add lots and lots of fertilizers into their soil, but when it rains, the fertilizers leak into the soil and reach rivers, lakes, etc. And this causes eutrophication. So our first point is that the fertilizers enter the water, adding extra nutrients to the lake, which includes nitrates and phosphates. These extra nutrients, cause algal bloom. Remember, algal bloom is the rapid production of algae. And then our second point is it blocks out light. It blocks sunlight, therefore no photosynthesis. 5, no oxygen. 6, death. Basically no respiration as well, because remember, in a lake we also have fish, and if there's no sunlight, the plants produce no oxygen in the water, and therefore the fish can't respire aerobically. Now, another cause of eutrophication is also sewage. Sewage also causes eutrophication. Because sewage contains a lot of phosphates. Stop me if you have any questions, please. And again, it does exactly the same thing as fertilizers. So I've rambled a bit about quite a lot about eutrophication today. Does everybody understand what it is now? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So deforestation. So remember, deforestation is bad, very bad. It's basically chopping down trees. Now that means animals lose habitats. So those animals that lived where, they also disappear. So there are other sort of bad things that affect sort of the soil, the carbon cycle, and evapotranspiration. Again, this is literally geography. So number one, we have something called leaching. So leaching is basically when trees take up nutrients from the soil before they can be washed away. They can be washed away, but return them to the soil. Washed away by rain. But return them to the soil when leaves die. So when trees are removed, that means the nutrients get leached away, but they don't get replaced. And if that happens, it leads to, if we have no nutrients, infertile soil. So yeah, our second point is soil erosion. So deforestation causes soil erosion. So remember, tree roots specifically hold soil together. Now, when they're cut off, what happens? The soil is washed away by the rain. I should probably write this neater. By rain. Does everybody understand so far? Leaving again infertile soil. Say yes if you understand. If I am going a bit quick, then this will all be sent to you. All of these notes here, which are all typed up, which basically cover everything, and a nice mind map you guys can do on your own, and also past paper questions with answers. Okay, so that's water pollution and deforestation. Just remember, deforestation, cutting down trees. Therefore, what happens? We disturb the balance of carbon dioxide and oxygen, because the Amazon is a great example. Lots of deforestation occurring there, and the Amazon is an oxygen powerhouse, but it's sort of not becoming one anymore, because all of the trees are being cut down. Therefore, less photosynthesis can occur. Therefore, less carbon dioxide conversion to oxygen can occur, and therefore more CO2 is in the atmosphere, leading to global warming. So remember, deforestation does also lead to global warming. So does everybody understand that? Okay, we'll now touch upon air pollution, again linking to global warming. We have CO2, and we also have sulfur dioxide. So carbon dioxide, global warming, we know that. And then that causes melting icebergs, so on, flooding, things like that. And it's like an easy 4 marker. Sulfur dioxide causes acid rain. Good. Now, acid rain is when the rain has a pH of lower than 6. 7 is neutral, remember. Anything below 7 is acidic. Now, Acid rain is caused by the sulfur dioxide combining with water, causing acidic conditions. Now, what happens if acid pours onto your city, or it pours onto like just onto your farm, or on a lake? Crops are destroyed. Limestone, statues also destroyed. Aquatic organisms destroyed. Basically, there's no good effect of sulfur dioxide. What else? Now, where does this sulfur dioxide come from? It comes from sulfur impurities in coal. So when we burn coal, is burnt, sulfur dioxide is released. This is also in your chemistry specification, depending on your exam board. But basically, there's sulfur impurities in coal, and when coal is burnt, these sulfur impurities turn into sulfur dioxide and therefore cause acid rain. So does everybody understand? Air pollution. So yes, or do you want me to go through it again? Let me know. Yeah. Okay, great. So I'm assuming everybody knows about air pollution now. Okay, so finally, the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle. Okay. Also, I completely forgot to add to air pollution, carbon monoxide. Does anybody know what carbon monoxide does? Can someone tell me what carbon monoxide does? Yeah, it binds to hemoglobin. Binds to hemoglobin, and that causes death. Basically, if it binds to hemoglobin, it means that oxygen won't be able to transfer. Oxygen won't be able to go around your body, won't be able to reach your muscles. Therefore, no respiration will occur. You know the answer to respiration: less aerobic respiration, more anaerobic respiration, more lactic acid. Therefore, fatigue, death, etc. Okay. Oh, nitrogen cycle. Where is it? Kills, yeah, basically. But remember, carbon dioxide is the silent killer, so you can't know if like there's carbon dioxide. It smells of nothing. So like it's a common cause of like deaths around the world, just because, especially with boilers. I think there was a case in Egypt on holiday when a family got killed because of carbon monoxide poisoning. So yeah, there are a couple of what do you call it? It's like suggest questions on exam papers. Suggest and that something like that might come up. Okay, nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen cycle, we know that 78% of the gases in the world is nitrogen. Now remember, nitrogen equals very unreactive. So what happens when we breathe in oxygen? Sorry, what happens when we breathe in nitrogen? Nothing. Yeah, so it basically goes, we just breathe it out. So yeah, so however, nitrogen is really, really important because it makes needed to make proteins. But why? Because we need it for growth. So this is for plants, by the way. So plants, remember that plants get their proteins from plants get their nitrogen from the soil. So nitrogen from the air needs to be turned into nitrogen compounds. So plants get nitrogen from soil, not the air. So nitrogen needs to be turned into nitrogen compounds. Good. For example, these nitrogen compounds are like nitrates. You would have heard, you've probably come across these in minerals for plants. So how can this happen? Number one, we have lighting. Number two, we have nitrogen fixing bacteria. So lighting, basically that we need energy in, sorry, did I say light? Lightning. So have you got, do you just say yes if you have heard of the nitrogen cycle before? Yeah, okay. So in a bolt of lightning, we know that there is a lot of like energy, and this energy allows nitrogen to react with oxygen, and this basically produces nitrates. Secondly, we have nitrogen fixing bacteria, and that's in the roots and the soils of a couple of plants. So for example, 4 types of bacteria, we have decomposers, which break down proteins and urea, and they turn it into ammonia, which is a nitrogen compound. And this forms ammonium ions. Remember, ammonium ions are a compound of nitrogen. We also have nitrifying bacteria, which turns ammonium ions into nitrates. Good. Yeah, exactly, Ken. And we have sort of nitrogen fixing bacteria, which turns atmospheric N2 into nitrogen compounds that plants can use. And I think it's denitrifying bacteria. I don't know how to say it. Denitrifying bacteria. Am I saying it right? But basically, that turns nitrates back into the gas. But there's no benefit. There's no benefit to that. There is a good diagram for the nitrogen cycle. I'll put it onto the notes before I send it to you guys. But that's basically it. Remember that denitrifying bacteria comes from the soil back into the atmosphere. But that's the nitrogen cycle sort of done very, very summarily. But just remember the 4 types of bacteria involved in the nitrogen cycle. I'll write that down. Bacteria involved. We have number 1, decomposers. Number 2, nitrifying bacteria. Number 3, nitrogen fixing bacteria. Number 4, denitrifying bacteria. And remember, no use to this one. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for joining today's crash course. Have you guys found it useful? It would be great if you guys could rate it out of 10. but I wasn't able to cover the carbon cycle because I was out of time, but all of the notes are at the bottom, which are all nice typed up notes. How can I get the recording? It will be sent via email. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. Where can you get the previous? So all of the other crash courses are all available on the store. So for example, so this will also go on the store, but you guys will get it for free because you did buy this. So if you just go to the crash course section, we have all of the crash courses for A-level bio, maths, physics, chemistry, bio, I think is the biggest one. Will you be doing more during the holidays? Yes, and during exam season. So if anybody does want any previous crash courses that we've done before, then feel free to get them over here. They also do come with the notes, but hopefully this has helped you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining. Does anyone have any questions for me? Thank you so much. I always struggle with remembering everything, but you explained it so well for me. Thank you so much. Can you do more on paper one? Yes, I will. Yes, I can do that. I'll set them up soon. Okay. Thank you so much for joining today. What other active recall methods did you use apart from blurting? ANKI. If you haven't received the recordings for crash courses you paid for, just email me and I can get them sent to you. Sometimes you might have been missed on the mailing list, but if you do want any recordings, then just feel free to email me with a screenshot providing me thinking that you bought the crash courses, and I can send it to you. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining today. See you soon. Bye. See you.